Okay, welcome to the 11th episode of Vital Questions. As always, I'm your host, Che Guerrero with
La co-host.
La co-host.
Mhm.
This week, we're starting off a little different. Before we get right into our question and get into the news topic today, which we're going to talk about. Well, how would you describe our topic for today?
Morbid.
Morbid. Yes. The
It's
mortality, life.
yeah, it's about life and mortality, and how politics come into play.
Yes.
And maybe our representatives should stop screwing us over because of we'll get to that.
Because of their thirst for power. But
Yeah.
before we get into all that, we wanted to take this time to do something that I don't think we've done in the past,
Yeah.
is tell you about who we are.
Yeah, I think our first episode that was under a different name
Mhm.
and we were still trying to figure it out. I mean, we still are, but I think we tried to give an idea of what we were trying to do with this,
Mhm.
but didn't go into too much detail about ourselves. And I know for me it's a little weird, right? Because I'm not on camera
Yeah.
for a bunch of different reasons, right? But yeah, so just thought it'd be helpful and hopefully insightful as to why we're doing this if you know a little bit more about us, especially because we have been doing a lot of work on our Substack,
Mhm.
and we do want to, again, encourage everyone to visit us there and subscribe. If you're able to subscribe, under a paid model, that'd be super great, right?
Yeah.
But if you can only do the free version, totally understandable, especially during these times, of course. But any kind of support, we appreciate it. We just wanted to, one, kind of again emphasize the importance of our Substack
Mm.
because of the suppression that's happening in other platforms and all that, right? So just wanted to flag that. But yeah.
Yeah, and the Substack also it gave us this idea to be a little bit more about like who we are and sharing with people, because what's funny about Substack, more than anything else, is that it's one of the first platforms that we're starting that we actually feel like we're building a community.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I mean, we love giving you news stories, we love keeping you informed, but the Substack is the first time that we feel like, oh my gosh, we're talking about things like, we're talking about the Knicks, and we're talking about things that make us laugh, and we're starting to show a little bit more of our personality outside of the journalistic style that we've had for the last few months because of the new administration. So it was kind of like nice to be able to be human for a little bit with some
Yeah.
of this content, some of this
Yeah.
work.
And I mean, and that's the idea, right? I think that the platform itself is mentions that it is about community building as well, right? And to not be stuck to algorithms like a lot of other platforms have. But to your point, it's been really nice to get support from others, right, that are like-minded and
Yeah.
just kind of encouraging us to continue doing the work. And yeah, and also just getting a lot of insight from other people that are trying to get good information out there
Hmm.
and accurate information out there, right? So
Yeah.
but yeah, so I guess I don't know if you want to kick it off with like quick background about yourself, or do you feel like people really know you?
You know what? Maybe you should go first. And I think, and I only say that because, like, I know you're probably gonna flag me for this, and probably people in the comments are gonna flag me for this. But I don't feel
You always got to say something
I
that
always
people.
gotta say something like that. But I don't feel comfortable talking too much about my life and my past with everything going on.
Yeah,
And that is something that I've had to be honest about.
right.
I mean, if you knew me, I mean, this is if anybody has known me, you know my work, you follow me, you knew how honest I was from when I started in 2020,
Yeah.
and talking about my experience and everything that I've gone through. And if you know the person you've been seeing him for, at least half a decade, you know what I'm about and you know why I do this. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, with this new administration, I can't fully tell you what I'm about and why I'm doing this. And some of those reasons I have to keep closer to the chest than any time be in the past.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what's sad.
And I know we've talked about it. So, and again, it's terrible because it's also who you are, right? Like it's
Hmm.
but
I,
yeah,
I,
but
I think, I've tried to, like, talk to people about how, and I'm not the only person talking. There's a lot of content creators online who had a lot of the similar upbringing. And to see them also have to be like, hey, I can now no longer talk about this of myself growing up, or this of myself, or you're going to see. And it's just been very sad for people to have to go back in the shadows.
yeah,
So for me personally, why I continue this work and why I didn't just, like, shut it all down and go hide under a rock, is because I understood that I'm still, I have a way that I appreciate sharing the news, that I like to, like we do, we big bring big concepts and make them small and digestible and have people be able to understand it. That's what I've always loved about stand-up.
Yeah.
You know, in stand-up comedy, you take like a major idea, like, you know, from the meaning of life,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you break it down to these humorous points where people could be like, oh, I've never thought about, you know, the afterlife that way or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I try to do with comedy when it comes to politics and stuff like that. So I always realize like, oh, I can teach people through comedy.
Yeah.
And that's why I do what I do, because I love educating people. I really, you know, a lot of people online might be like, oh, this dude's angry, or this dude only talks about this. I'm like, you know, I'm a passionate person who actually genuinely loves everybody.
Yeah.
I genuinely love people. I think people, like I say,
Well, right. Not every
person, well, individuals can be great.
Humans generally.
Humans can be great.
Right.
People, collective thoughts, ideologies are where the problem lies, and where we start to hurt each other. And so, like, yeah, I'm a big point of like, I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be cool. But I know we can't get there because of, unfortunately, white supremacy, top of the list, and all the other thing else stuff. Also, I just want to like try and do my part and try and move the conversation forward and trying to get us past this white supremacy world that we live in. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah, actually, and on the whole, trying to do your part, that's kind of a perfect segue, because that's kind of what I've been feeling like. That's why I started doing this kind of work. So for background on my end, I was actually a corporate lawyer for about a decade. So drastically different than the type of work and reporting that we're doing. Obviously, nothing tied to journalism, but had always been in the know enough to know high level the things that were happening, right? In the know enough also as a lawyer, and most lawyers I'm sure can agree with me, that once you learn how our system is set up, and once you learn, although the intent behind the setup of the system and how it's actually applied, you see that it's broken in so many different ways, right? And the system being our, whether criminal justice system, legal system, whatever system you want to talk about under the legal umbrella, but there's a lot of issues in all these different systems, right? So candidly, that's why I didn't go the immigration route, even though I went into law school with that mentality, because I knew how broken it was. And admittedly, because I get so attached to people and care just genuinely really deeply, I couldn't imagine every day having to manage cases where you knew your client deserved the best. You knew your client, for example, deserved asylum. You know your client is going through some crazy situation, and you try your hardest. And a lot of immigration lawyers do incredible work. And no matter how hard you try, you still are subject to the variables, right? And I couldn't imagine dealing with that on a regular basis. So I went with the corporate route because I also had a lot of family things going on that, admittedly, financially, there needed to be some finances to be able to provide for that, right?
The pressure of, you know, being first gen Latina, going to this kind of college.
Correct.
Your parents gave you all the tools that they never had. So now you gotta bring it home, baby.
Right. And that is the pressure that I think people in the spaces kind of talk about, but isn't at the forefront of a lot of conversations, right? This pressure that you get from family, well-intended, right? Because they ideally just want the best for you and want you to do the best, but not recognizing the potential damage that causes.
Luckily, my family never thought I would amount to anything.
All right.
No, you know what? I was the opposite. My family, from the second we got to this country, was on such survival mode, more than like, you know, because I think some parents come here, you know, and they have a better, like, we're coming here for our children's future and da-da-da. My family was just like, we just got to get away from all the horribleness, and then surviving for so long that they didn't really put a lot of emphasis on what the future looked like for us. And especially, you know, by the time I got to the point where like we were settled enough to be like, wow, what does the future for our family look like? I was already going to high school, and they were like, sorry, we hadn't been to the point where we could save for this kind of future for you, where we can think about this kind of future for you. So it was kind of like, we talked about, it was a little like, okay, so I get to figure out what I want. That sucks, because usually sometimes it's nice when parents put you on a path and they guide you and stuff like that. That's why I fell into comedy, because I was like, if nobody's asking me to do anything with my life, I'm gonna do stand-up comedy.
Yeah, because that's where your heart is.
And that's where my heart was, you know. It was like that show Forever.
Yeah.
You
oh
know?
yeah, y'all should watch Forever
that show.
on Netflix. Yo, that show's nice.
You know, he went with his music. I went with my, you know, my comedy, my jokes.
Don't be ruining the ending for people. What the hell's wrong with you? Anyways,
spoiler alert.
Oh anyways, but actually on that, so just admittedly, like it's not like I didn't come from means, to clarify.
No,
right. And I also didn't
ideology.
Well, not only that, but I also didn't have my parents give anything to me, right? Like admittedly just stopped asking for anything at the age of like 15, 16.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working since that age,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it doesn't, I still always had a roof over my head, always had food on the table, always admittedly never realized how broke we were, to my parents' credit, right? Until an adult where I was like, oh, y'all don't cut y'all toothpaste in half to get more
Yeah,
toothpaste?
yeah,
Y'all
yeah.
don't put water in your ketchup to get more ketchup? What? That's
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
Yeah, y'all don't
Um,
split cables, so
but
no.
yeah, but again, never realized that that was quote unquote poor because
Yeah.
that's all I really knew, right? But
Mm-hmm.
again, what I will say is that my parents, yes, they emphasized education throughout my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
It was knowledge is power, was ingrained in me, and but in terms of the skills and the ability to enter a corporate world that no one in my family really
Mm-hmm.
had experience in to help guide me in that way. And again, to be the whole first gen thing, right? First to graduate college in the US in my immediate family, first to pursue postgraduate degree, first to do any of that. I didn't know any of that. Like I didn't,
Yeah.
you hustle, you figure it out,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah. Going to these PWIs when your parents
yeah,
did not maneuver those spaces at all. You're
correct.
like, what? I didn't realize I was going to PWIs when I first started comedy. That's when I first started getting into PWIs. And I'm like, oh,
I didn't,
predominantly white institutions.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't, I mean, for me, it took a while to get to that space of like not feeling like an imposter, right? The whole imposter syndrome
Mm-hmm.
was very real. Especially never being part of those spaces. But I also realized kind of quickly, thanks to a lot of great mentorship from other Latinos and other minorities that I gravitated towards, like they just kind of confirmed that no, you being different and you being Latina is actually what makes you really cool and different. And there's nothing wrong with that. And it
Mm-hmm.
is our differences that make us beautiful. And it is our differences that make us interesting. Because if you come across another kid whose dad or mom or both were judges or lawyers or whatever, and they, summered at whatever country club and they did the thing. Yeah, they've heard these stories before, right? What you
Mm-hmm.
haven't heard of is my family bringing pasta to the beach because that thing keeps well. And we have a whole olla in the middle of it. Like
Yeah.
you haven't heard that, or you haven't heard about the fact that, hey, I'm cleaning my Tupperware, but it's actually not Tupperware. It's leftover Chinese food
Oh yeah, yeah.
Tupperware.
You keep those.
And I'm not cleaning it to recycle. I'm cleaning it to
Reuse.
reuse, my friend. So there was been different instances like
Yeah.
that, right? Where yes, you can let it get in your head for sure, right? It's very
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable in certain situations where it's just like, oh, this person thinks I'm poor.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I am poor. I just got out of law school. Like,
Yeah.
what? Okay.
See, but that's what I respect about you. You went into a lot of PWIs and you still figured out like groups that were Latino heavy. You still figured out how to connect with your Latinidad and how not to let anyone take anything away from you.
Well, I tried on that last prong. I tried, and also, admittedly, that's part of. It was one of the things that caused me to make this switch, at least for now,
Yeah.
in terms of depending on how everything plays out, depending on the state of the world and everything. Because and don't get me wrong, I think in terms of corporate spaces, I think there's a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of supportive spaces, and I
Mm-hmm.
know of them. I've been in part of some of them. There's a lot of great people too that are genuine people that actually care. And I know this sounds unfathomable to people of like corporate. No, what? No. But I've also been in spaces where, yeah, I felt like people were trying to tear me down intentionally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they were telling me I was wrong about stuff and I wasn't, and it
Yeah.
ended up coming out. Or they were stuck in their own ways of doing things. And whenever I suggested anything different, it was blasphemous because God forbid you suggest something different
Mm-hmm.
to an established person that's in a company or in a firm or wherever it is, and then it becomes an issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just a lot of things that were intentionally set up to stifle my growth and my potential. I saw it kind of in front of me and I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, so given everything that's happened recently after the election, I just, especially the more we talked about the work that you were already doing, just felt inclined to kind of do my part.
Yeah.
And a lot of this has a lot of legal heavy concepts in it. So my hope is that we can help distill a lot of the information and make it, to your point, digestible for people.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I don't have immigration background. I don't have necessarily a journalistic background. What I do have is a lot of honesty under my belt, and I try to give real information, accurate information through an educated lens, right? Which again, I know that I worked very hard, but I'm just blessed to have this education, right? Granted, I have student loans too, but
but it's also like, going back to, and I think this might, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, but I think this might be able to hop us into our first story, which, we're going to talk about. Also another part that I found, and maybe, you could speak to, speaking in corporate, like working in corporate, you can't really speak your mind. You're beholden.
That's the part that I ironically wasn't mentioning, but yes.
But no, but this deals perfectly with how you are a good person. You know what your morals are,
Hmm.
and you understand that being for a bigger corporation, they have their talking points. They
Yeah.
have how they want to be perceived.
Right.
So you cannot step outside of that.
There's different interests at play when you're talking about corporations, and that's something that I don't think people appreciate,
And
actually.
that's where, you wanted to be able to do something where you could be a lot more honest about your opinions and
Yeah.
be able to, navigate others through this in a way that you wouldn't have been able to do before.
Right.
And that is honorable. And that is what we
Thank
should all be
you.
doing. Now, the problem is, and now we're getting into hopefully the story here,
Hmm.
is that when corporations like news outlets
Hmm.
are beholden to bigger people and special interests and all these things, we are in an atmosphere where we are not getting the real news
Right.
because people are not being as brave as I'm going to point to, like, oh, is of being able to be like, I need to tell people the truth and be able to do this more than I have love or respect for this, organization or company.
Yeah.
And that's where I think more people should be, but we're not there. And that's why we have noticed that we're not getting the full picture from the news that we should be getting.
Right. And that's the thing. I think that people understand the concept of censorship generally, but not
Hmm.
recognizing how this is coming into play for the media.
Hmm.
Right. And not recognizing, like, if you, and again, we always encourage everyone to do their own research. If you do your own research in terms of who owns these different media outlets, you'll recognize and you'll see that it's actually, there's certain people at the top.
Hmm.
Right. And then if you look into their connections and who they may or may not support, there may or may not be certain connections that you may want to look
Hmm.
into. Right. And when you have a president who basically is strong arming everyone under the
Hmm.
sun, and intentionally going after major news outlets who are criticizing him,
Hmm.
they have to self censor with and to avoid getting either sanctioned or to avoid getting an executive order
Yeah.
placed against them, right? Like to avoid the FTC going after them.
Yeah.
After Trump cleared house in the FTC, as we know, and got
Hmm.
rid of incredible people that were part of the
Hmm.
FTC, and that now it's more like henchmen of his.
This also kind of leads into something I saw very quick this morning. I didn't bring it up, so I'm gonna throw you a monkey wrench into this. But
You always do this.
always sorry about that, co-host. But the Trump, not the Trump administration, but ABC
Hmm.
just told The View.
Oh yeah. Oh, I saw that too, so I know what you're talking about.
Great. No curveballs here. She hit it and she hit it out of the park. That's what's great about you. ABC has told The View to tone down their Trump talk.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, but since 2016, Trump talk is news.
Right.
Trump talk is the Daily Show. Trump talk is CBS. It's like we are Trump
Hmm.
talk. What are you talking about that we cannot talk? That the View has to tone down their rhetoric about Trump.
Yeah.
That is already indicated, like we're saying, of special interest, powerful people going, hey, we're not censoring you. We're just saying tone it down or don't talk about this news story
And that is
fully.
censorship, and that's the thing, right? Like, and
They'll
that's
act like it's not, because I've
yeah.
gotten that pretty much in my life. Like, oh, do you always I talk about being Latino and like the problems your community have and stand up? Can't you do something else? And I'm like,
That's
why
what
are you censoring me?
right. And also that's where your values are, and that's what you're passionate about. So that's also, yeah.
So
Yeah, no, it's funny. I saw that an article about the View situation, but I saw that apparently the women of the View, and I don't know if it's the producers also, but like they're like, okay, that's cute. Like, and they're just gonna keep on because I forget who said it, but they said something along, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but they said something along the lines of uh how could we not talk about, to your point, how could
yeah.
we not talk about this? That's what everyone's talking about. That's what's happening. That's at the forefront of our entire country,
Hmm.
the dismantling of it.
Hmm.
And you want us to talk about celebrity news because apparently that's what they suggested, for them to focus
Yeah.
on celebrities, which is just like, shut the hell
I
up.
don't give a damn
Because
who's dating who.
no one cares.
I
You know
mean,
what?
I care what Bad Bunny's doing, but that's me on my own looking
You
up for Bad Bunny information. But I
Facts.
don't need The View to be all Bad Bunny.
But that
Although,
but it's also condescending
yeah.
to, and again, as a woman, I think it's condescending to
Oh,
tell a panel full of women hosts to
some
be
of the
like,
women of
hey,
color.
you know what you guys should care about? You should care about hairstyles, and you should care about what so and so wears, and you should care about like the red carpet. Our world is falling apart.
Yeah.
What is wrong with y'all? How dare you?
Yeah.
Like, they're actually trying to do their job and do their part, right? Because sure, The View has some fun stuff, and sure, like I've watched The View a bunch of times. Like I think it's a fun show. I
Yeah.
haven't watched it in a while actually,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
it when I watched it
That's what I was
before,
gonna say. You probably haven't watched in a while because like when you watch like
I watched it when like Adrienne Bailon was on it from like Cheetah Girls 3LW.
okay.
Don't look at me like that, like you don't know who
I think
that
that might have been a while ago, babe.
Oh, shut up. Whatever. I like her.
No, but it is. But you know, it's funny. It's because like I think we were watching maybe Jimmy Kimmel, and he was like, "Do you guys want to know what we were talking about in 2007?"
Mm.
And they went back to 2007, and like the main story was like a squirrel got into a car. And that was like
it funny?
it was very
probably
funny.
funny.
And it was super like, and he was like, we cannot do these stories anymore. We
Right.
can't do these lighthearted, oh, you know, Ben Affleck spilled coffee on himself. What up, you know?
Because it's also, I think, as time has gone on and as people have become more aware, and with the advent of technology and access to information, we've spoken about this, that there's that people are coming to realize things significantly quicker and are just knowing or trying to understand the reality of things, right? So yeah, maybe the squirrel video is cute and all, but not when everything is falling apart.
Yeah.
Right. So it's incredibly tone deaf, but also ironically to the point of, I've heard this concept that like Americans are intentionally being, or US people are intentionally being manipulated or distracted with entertainment, right? Because the US is known to be the entertainment, like, epicenter of the world and all that. And that's why, the whole argument with TikTok and like, oh, you guys are dumbing down our citizens with this algorithm and all you care about is like dances and da da da. It kind of goes to that, right? When you have a major media outlet like ABC telling a major show that they have that has apparently really good ratings too, hey, you guys should tone it down with the political speak and care about all this minutia of random crap that no one actually cares about right now because there's a lot of more important things happening. It goes to that. It kind of provides more evidence of the fact that, like, yeah, a lot of these major outlets are just trying to distract us from what's happening.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to sound conspiracy theorist about it, but when you look at that specific example, it's kind of on its face.
Yeah. I mean, you know, somebody did a great analysis on how, remember, Donald Trump spent a lot of time in the WWE. I don't know if you know that Donald Trump, the person, was actually a WWE character. Like in the same vein as Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is the owner and he's also Vince McMahon, the wrestler, the character, sort of like The Rock.
Oh, I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, so in the world of wrestling, you have two people. You have Vince McMahon, the human, the person who lives out there, and then he also became Vince McMahon, the wrestler, the character, right? Donald Trump was brought into the WWE for a lot of seasons as Donald Trump, the wrestler. He did a few, like, not, you know, he punched people, a few moves, whatever. He had a storyline. But most importantly is that from Vince McMahon, he learned that because wrestling has this weird world where you're like, again, you're a person, but you're also a character. So they get blurred so people don't really know whatever they're seeing. Yeah, we have a new feature on the camera that moves. So some of y'all might be seeing that. Let's just do this so it stops. And there we go. So anyways, so that's where a lot of people point that Donald Trump learned how to be this WWE president through the WWE. That's why he's like, let's talk about, we're having a military parade, or let's talk about the fact that, we're doing all of this nonsense while at the same time he's like, trying to cut Medicaid, which is a lot more important. That's why he brought in Linda McMahon as the
U.S. Secretary of Education.
Yes. The dude's been stone cold stunned and all that stuff. She's been all that. But essentially going back to the point where you're like, they're trying to dumb us down.
Yeah.
And the one thing that Trump is much better at than, the Democrats in general is turning politics into a sport, into an arena where he is totally the showman and he can, make the other person the bad guy really quickly. Because he just knows how to make this thing a fucking spectacle, and that's what he's doing all day, every day.
Yeah. So funny. I don't know how that was going to segue into our subject matter for today, but all good.
Let's go.
So, I mean, our subject or our question is, I guess we're going with this, right?
Yeah.
How are our representatives failing health also failing us?
Yes.
So a big news from this past week is, the unfortunate news about former President Biden and his cancer diagnosis. And unfortunately, and again, obviously well wishes. And of course,
we're doing the whole thing. Yeah, well wishes. Hope you guys well. We never want cancer to hit anybody. This is terrible. Yada, yada, yada.
And we mean that wholeheartedly.
And I mean that wholeheartedly. But
No, okay. I know why you're all riled up. I know.
Okay, thank you. I do mean that. I do hope. I do hope he gets
Yeah,
well
no,
soon.
yeah.
Like, I don't want anybody and this to happen to anybody. But let's, he is
Yes.
a former president with some of the best healthcare in the world, and he is going to have better treatment than anybody else in this country could.
Yeah.
And that's why the first thing that I start off with that it's a little painful is the fact that there are people dealing with cancer every day
Yeah.
that are not going to have this kind of
Or
treatment.
not, unfortunate.
So
Absolutely.
he didn't, him and Obama did not do the right moves to make sure that people, when they get into the situation, will fully be covered. They try to help,
Right.
they try to do their part.
Right.
That's why Republicans are trying to take away the few things that
They were able to get
they were
through.
able to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
But it's still very heartbreaking that that this is happening to him, but at the same time, he'll get the best treatment ever.
Yeah. No, agreed. And yes, those are very valid points. But as this BBC article kind of headline shows, Biden's cancer diagnosis raises fresh questions about his health in White House, right? So that's where our thought for this episode kind of came about, where we realized, we were thinking about it and it's like, oh, well, it's kind of true, right? Because it seems like his diagnosis is pretty far along. And the question has come up, well, when did the Biden administration or Biden or his family or whoever first find out about this diagnosis? Is it as recently as this past week, or did he know about it ahead of time? Right. So the BBC article kind of goes into arguments on both sides. There is evidence of, some doctors express surprise that the aggressive form of cancer, which spread to his bones, was not detected earlier. Because it is true, right? Cancer doesn't necessarily, I mean, from my understanding, it's not that you just boom, all of a sudden one day to another, you're feeling terrible and you have stage 4 cancer or whatever, right? Like that's usually not the case.
From what I've seen in movies, it's just like, before people find out they have cancer, they usually cough into a handkerchief. There's blood. That's how you know. Like, when did he cough into the handkerchief? I'm just kidding, by the way. That's just totally making it up. But no, that's the part. Okay, so
it's first that, right? And then there's also reports that apparently certain Democratic aides sought to conceal other deteriorating health conditions of President Biden ahead of the 2024 election, right, while he was still in the running. Then there's this Original Sin book that we've heard about.
Jake Tapper's.
Which we'll revisit, right? But that's kind of where this idea, at least for us, first came about in terms of, well, what is happening and when did they know? But in that book, apparently, they're saying that Biden was unable to recognize Hollywood actors or Hollywood actor and Democratic donor George Clooney, or to remember the names of key aides in his final year in office, right? So people that he was working with regularly. Up in the book, they're saying Biden's physical deterioration, most apparent in his halting walk, had become so severe that there were internal discussions about putting the president in a wheelchair, but they couldn't do so until after the election.
Oh God.
Lastly, there's Dr. Chris George of Northwestern Health Network told Reuters when discussing the subject about Biden's health, quote, "I would assume the former president gets a very thorough physical each year. It's sort of hard for me to believe that he's had a blood test within the past year that was normal." Right. So then all of this were kind of captured in the article in terms of arguments that, hey, maybe there was some kind of cover up, they were concealing information. Because if you think about it, and I'm assuming here, right? But like at the sign of any kind of health complication for a sitting president, they'd probably take him to the doctor right away.
Yeah.
Right. And to this doctor's point, if you had blood tests and you're regularly getting physicals, ideally you would see something.
Yeah.
Right. On the other,
sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say that kind of the other sides in the article because it points out counter arguments.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So they pointed out that cancers can grow fast without a patient displaying actually any symptoms, right? And that men over 70 are not routinely screened for this type of cancer. A former a Biden aide also said that the president's prior medical check for this specific cancer, prostate cancer, was more than a decade ago, right? Back in 2014, it came back clear. Also, apparently, U.S. medical guidelines don't recommend routine blood screenings for men over 70 because prostate cancer can be very slow growing. And the difficulty of testing and treatment may outweigh the risk from the cancer.
Oh, yeah, because you've got to put somebody old under and all that stuff. Sometimes it's like,
ooh,
sometimes those anesthesias for an 80-year-old person is not the best because they might not wake up. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of this isn't just like a very simple thing. Like you have to go through a lot to be able to do it. So that's why they're a lot more careful and doing it on older people.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But on that last point, it is very notable that they say it's slow growing, right? Which suggests because he has a pretty aggressive stage of it that
Hmm.
he may have already had it. And again, goes back to the earlier
Right.
point. If you're doing regular checkups, if you're doing regular blood screens, presumably you would know,
Right.
right? So
And here's the thing, like, a lot of people have been saying, why are you even talking about Biden's health
mhm,
when there's way more important things that are happening with Trump and what the fuck he's doing? And I completely agree with that in part,
yeah,
but we cannot gloss over the fact that Biden's errors has led us here.
right,
Like somebody said very beautifully, Biden was supposed to be the transitional president that gets us out of fascism,
right,
right? That stops Trump in his tracks and is able to reset the United States to on a course that is not fascism.
mhm,
What he did was he rehanded power back to Trump,
mhm,
actually weakened power. The Supreme Court had just given the president the power to be a king, essentially.
immunity, yeah,
Biden did make it harder for people to seek asylum. He did shut down the border. Do you know what
mhm.
I mean? He did send more weapons over to Israel, continuing the genocide. Like he did all these things, set it up for Trump, and now he's like, "Oops, I was also sick the whole time."
Well, I don't think he said that,
Well, no,
but
but the
yes,
book is
it's
basically
essentially
indicating so you failed what the people voted for you to do,
mhm,
and you pushed further because you're like, well, I don't want Trump to come into power. Dude, you're sick.
mhm,
You're not well.
right,
And I'm sorry. I'm gonna say this straight up. And again, this is gonna probably get flagged. He should have given up before the primaries. There is
mhm,
one thing that Republicans were saying that I was like, damn it, I agree with you. This one and one time. Millions of people in the primary voting for Biden and then him going, Kamala is going to be the nominee. You did steal the vote from people.
yeah,
You did.
yeah,
You went there and got the primary votes from people, and then you picked the person for us. Kamala would have done a great job. Kamala would not have been this, but they chose the person, somebody inside the house.
right. And that was the major critique, and again, that kinda goes to what we're talking about, right? Like, especially at the time, there's clearly evidence of, like, some kind of something, right? And everyone saw it, like, you can see it when he was being interviewed, you can see it you saw it during the disastrous debate that he had
Hmm.
with Trump, right? Like, you can see that he was failing. So, whether it was he just really wanted to keep his job, whether it was ego, whether it was he supposedly loves this country so much that he wanted to be another president, whatever was the reasoning, it doesn't matter because if you're trying to be elected into office, presumably you're putting this country before yourself
Hmm.
because that is what it is to be an elected official.
Hmm.
You're not supposed to be self-interested.
Yeah.
Whether or not people actually abide by that obviously is a different question. But technically speaking, that's how this is supposed to play out.
Hmm.
So if you love this country so much, presumably you're doing the best thing for your party
Yeah.
because that is the best thing ultimately for this country,
Yeah.
presumably. So then if you know that, hey, something actually medically might happen to me during this term because I'm not doing too great. And then if I kind of bow out or whatever, we don't know who's going to be the elected official. We don't know anything. So maybe before that actually happens, you take a step back and let one of the many different people in your party who are very capable to step up, right? And be actually properly elected to your
Yeah.
point, right? Because had he not tried to run or maybe something whatever it is, the
Hmm.
timeline of his health issues, if he just decided in the moment of like, this is I'm only hurting the party at this
Hmm.
point, took a step back, let the people elect
Yeah.
someone and not waited last minute, then yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we wouldn't be in the situation. But the Democratic Party or whoever decided,
Whoever decided.
because it's not everyone in the Democrats,
No,
we know that.
we don't. So
And
somebody tried to primary him because of his health.
yeah,
And people were just and most people in the party were like, no, he's fine. He's doing tours. He's going on that. He's doing this. And here's the thing that I wanted to point out. Uh, we also got fooled because remember, there were two old white aging men running for president. They both have mental decline.
yeah.
They are both in they're old. But the problem is that I think we were going, look, my old man is doing better than your old man. And it's like, no, both of them are
Both of
fucked
them are really old men with some health
with
issues.
health issues. But unfortunately, their old man got past the finish line better
Yeah.
than our old man.
Which is, and actually that goes to the quote that I'm going to bring up, the irony of this quote, right? Where, again, I never thought I'd agree with something JD Vance says, but he
You
said,
have
and again,
the other quote?
yeah.
Oh, you just have the quote. Okay.
Yes, I have the quote.
Yeah.
Well, actually, here, let me. Oh no, I don't have it up. So yeah, where he said, "This is not child's play. We can pray for good health, but also recognize that if you're not in good enough health to do the job, you shouldn't be doing the job." Right. So the sentiment, and in terms of that statement itself, I agree with.
Yeah.
Do I agree with this man? Of course not.
No.
Like,
Now I need, but what I need is JD Vance to take that sentiment into the White House and be like, listen, if you're not capable to do the job, you need to not do the job.
Right.
That's the difference. Because he'll, that's the thing about Republicans.
Right.
They'll say it about Democrats all day, like, oh, you are old. Oh, you are incompetent. Oh, you did do a mistake with your emails. But as soon as they do it, they go like, emails? What emails? Emails don't matter. Emails are not important for government safety.
Yeah. I mean, the hypocrisy and the lack of accountability of this party and administration is, I don't think, a surprise to anyone. But I do think it is really funny for him to, out of all people, to be saying that, because to your point, he's not recognizing that his old man is not all there because he can't get out a coherent thought to save his life, right? So
he also killed the Pope, so I don't need to be hearing anything from JD Vance killed the Pope.
All right, chill.
His bad aura took away,
and we're saying this satirically
life.
because we live under a dictatorship.
Hashtag satire.
But oh my God, JD Vance killed the president. Nope.
I mean the Pope.
What?
I'm kidding. It's just a joke.
And that we have to cut out now because of the other stuff that's been happening.
I'll cut it out. Don't worry about it. Anyways, no, but like we were talking about, getting back to the point that these elected officials, Trump, Biden,
and we'll dig into a couple others.
This government is being run and operated by octarians
who have failing health, right? Because
it's
not about ageism.
Right. It's not about ageism.
To clarify, right? Because I know many different people who are older and are in their 80s. And
my grandma made it to 88 even to her last day, was the sharpest, funniest, wittiest, knew about geopolitics. And I told you, man, up until 88, my grandma probably could have been president. Till her last day, she could have been president.
Well, and that's my point, right? So that, to clarify, we're not talking about just older people. No, it's people who have known health conditions or known health issues and are choosing to either go again, try to get reelected or just try to get into office. And what are y'all doing? Because again, you're just setting up everyone else for failure. And if you're going into this office supposedly for the care of people and supposedly because you care about this country, you wouldn't be doing that. So going back to the book Original Sin by Jake Taper and Alex Thompson. Whatever.
Jake got a taper. You said taper like Jake Taper.
Yeah.
I love that because we so hood like Jake Taper.
I also don't necessarily care about someone who's, that egotistical that withholds this level of information to themselves and creates a book about it.
That's what we wanted to talk about.
So that's why I'm like, I actually don't care that I messed up his name. Whatever.
Who cares, Jake? You're Taper now. You're right.
But it came up, during one of our favorite shows, The Daily Show, where Jon Stewart flagged for everyone. This is a Guardian article about it, but flagged for everyone that, this CNN anchor did this whole investigative journalism project and all this stuff and took the time to create a book about it to sell us that information. Meanwhile, he's had it this entire time, and maybe it could have helped the Democratic Party, right? Maybe it could have helped efforts to not, be stuck in the way that we just described, right? Maybe this could have getting this information out and making it breaking news rather than making people pay for it. Maybe that would have helped us in the long run. So I'm just gonna play a clip. I just realized I should have queued this up over here.
No, it's okay. We'll get it.
So I'm just gonna play a YouTube clip from The Daily Show.
Flash.
All right, we gotta bring it up. I'll bring it for us. There we go.
Okay.
Let's play this.
750.
So this is Jon Stewart talking about Tapper's book and just the bombshell in it and just how people have to read it.
Yeah. So
let's just hear a little bit of it.
Forgetting about the fact how weird it is that the news is selling you a book about news they should have told you was news a year ago for free.
That's about it, right?
That's about it, but that's so important.
Because it's so true. And when it's funny, when we were watching that episode, I was thinking about it kind of the entire time. I'm like, wait a minute, how are you making people pay for this? Like, your job is a news anchor,
Yeah.
and you went on this project, whether it was like funded by CNN or not. I didn't look into that, but on your own volition with your, your guy, whatever it was, Alex Thompson, or through CNN.
Yeah.
You decided to go on this project to find out all this information, found it out.
If Biden's health is declining, his mental health,
right?
You found out that he is in decline.
Apparently so many details that you made a book about it. And because, capitalism was like, hey, you know what? Even though this is my job, like, technically, if you have integrity as a news anchor and a reporter and recognize the importance of this level of information and how it can domino into, I don't know, the history of the United States and the way that it is now, maybe you could have salvaged something for the Democratic Party or for everyone that believes in, I don't know, the semblance of a government that's, a democracy. Maybe you could have helped out people with releasing this information.
That's where we had the debate and the conversation about how people who are inside these corporations, because remember, this is CNN, owned, I believe, by Ted Turner, who owns like TBS and a bunch of other channels and stuff like that. This is where these news anchors are possibly a lot of times only able to bring up stories under the guidelines that CNN gives them. So it's like, you could talk about Biden's health, but he's up for re-election, and so-and-so does know Biden, so they're friends, so they don't want you to go too hard on his mental health. So instead of Tapper being like, no, I'm going to do my job as a reporter and do this, they probably thought that they were defending democracy by keeping this lie and being like, you know what, I'll just report on this when the dust settles and Biden does win, because Biden's going to win, or Kamala is going to win. And once they do, then I could talk about how in decline he really was, instead of doing your job and telling us what's actually happened so we can make it. They were trying to basically plan the course for the future, thinking that they were right.
But assuming that that's the case,
I'm assuming very heavily.
And that was the thought process. Oh my God.
This is just me assuming.
We're going to go back to the regular camera if you like, just do it now.
Okay. By the way, anybody not watching, we got a new camera that I could just zoom in and out with just finger movement. So get ready for that.
But assuming that that's the case, then that is ignorant as hell, and he should not have a job. You clearly can't think critically. If you just, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to withhold this information because it's not going to cause any issues and all that stuff. That's BS, because this isn't like Biden's health and all that stuff should have never been, if they want to frame it as like a matter of national security or whatever the hell, right, to like have that excuse of not releasing the information. No, if anything, this is even more important.
It is more of a
and vital questions, vital for people that were voting to know about it.
Yeah.
Right. And or for just the Democratic Party generally to know about it. Right. So that way there's no excuse. You need to go take care of your health, dude. Just focus on your health. And let's elect someone to represent the Democratic Party that's elected by the people, not appointed by someone who's on his way out, who everyone was already upset at his administration for. Then you pick someone within that same administration. How did you think that was going to play out? Don't get me wrong. I know that like there was a lot of criticism about Kamala, and I'm sure whatever, like I don't know all the nuances of it, but I think we can all generally agree that we wouldn't be in this current state of things if Kamala were in office.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. It's just that I feel very safe to say that is a fact. I know it's not actually a fact. We don't know that, but it's a fact.
Yeah. You see, in 2020, even during the pandemic, when people were able to pick their candidate for primary, yes, people didn't like Biden as the choice, but at least we saw that across the map, Biden won. Biden won huge. We might have been more Bernie fans. We might have been more, Elizabeth Warren fans. But at the end of the day, I saw, and everybody saw, hey, Biden did win the primaries. He won with a lot of votes. And that's why the party was a little bit more like, okay, we will get behind Biden and see how he does and see what this transitional president's going to be.
But that's the point, right? I was going to call him Tapper. Release the information that he knew about.
Yeah. The people should have been able to get a proper primary.
Right. Because even if people liked Biden enough to vote for him or whatever, if you're not going to be around or if you're not able to do the job.
It is crazy. He dropped out 3 months before. We don't think about that. How much 3 months?
That's no time.
That's no time.
That's no time, which I'm guessing is also why they were like, oh, well, now we have to just pick someone like ourselves real quick because we, from our entire, we know Kamala's great. She's whatever. And it's just like, She was a lawyer. She had a lot of experience. She was more than qualified. But when you throw someone into the ring that the people who are supposed to elect
hmm
is not the person that they elected
hmm
within an administration that everyone was already unhappy with,
Yeah, for
like,
various
what
reasons.
did you and frame the political campaign around hope and happiness and all this stuff?
Joy.
What kind of hope do we have with a party that didn't even allow us to elect our own candidate?
hmm
Like, think things
Yeah.
through,
The
people.
vibes, they were like, the vibes are vibing. I'm like, the vibes are not
And that's the
vibing.
thing, and I think I talked to you about this, that they were kind of going off of the Obama,
Hope.
hope,
Yeah.
but it was a different
It was
state of
different.
things.
Yeah. The people picked Obama to be
Right.
their hope.
Right.
We didn't pick Kamala to be our vibes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Yeah.
just like, I'm
I
all
still
for.
think Kamala is a great person,
Yeah, and
by the way. And I
I'm
would, if I could have voted, I would have voted for her.
yeah.
Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but yeah, so
And this
this
takes us to a bigger point. Not to cut you off, sorry, because we're trying to. But also, this isn't the first time that we've been. This is one of the major times where someone's health has had such a national repercussion like that. Because remember, we upon our research, there have been a lot of Democrats and Republicans,
yeah.
actually a lot more Democrats recently,
All right.
who have been either died in office or have been just put in nursing homes while they're still in office because these parties are so unwilling to give up power
Mhm.
to a younger generation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the whole specifically for presidents, this is nothing new. So this is what's the source? Los Angeles Times article.
Mhm.
The title is "It's Not Just Biden. There's a history of presidential health cover-ups."
Oh, great.
So where did I have it? Right here. Okay. So the article states, right, Grover Cleveland underwent surgery for oral cancer on a yacht in New York Harbor to keep his condition from being
I'm
widely
sorry.
known.
Just on a yacht, like it's such a like Dr. Evil, like we need to do this in international waters. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it wasn't international
Well,
waters,
it's the
but he
New York
just wanted
Harbor.
to
Yeah,
be out in the middle of the sea so no
yeah,
one would see him. Woodrow Wilson suffered a debilitating stroke, a fact
Mm.
covered up by his wife and confidants. Franklin D. Roosevelt, JFK, both suffered serious chronic ailments that were kept well away from the public eye. Those surrounding Ronald Reagan downplayed his injuries after a 1981 assassination attempt. And the Trump administration misled the public about the seriousness of the president's condition after he was diagnosed with COVID-19
Mm.
a month before the 2020 election.
Mhm.
Right. So these are just some examples of, at least at the presidential level,
Mhm.
quote unquote cover-ups.
Mhm.
But again, it's not just, to your point, it's not just presidents, and it goes across both parties. So we recently learned about a Republican representative. Um, so this is Kay Granger,
Mhm.
Texas representative, and apparently, she basically just kind of stopped coming to work. And it turns out she was living in a nursing home for months,
Mhm.
battling dementia without anyone knowing. So this, and it's not funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh.
No, it's not funny, but it's
It's
just
not funny. It's
the
just more
level of work that they're trying to do to hide these illnesses from us so they can remain in power, so they can continue with the majority or whatever.
right, exactly. And it's might be a political tactic, right, by the party, but that also hurts her constituents, right? Like, we're not Democrats, and I
Yeah.
mean not Republicans or anything, but just looking at it really high level in terms of what a representative is supposed to do. You're
Mhm.
supposed to be representing your constituents.
Mhm.
If you're battling dementia, you can't even remember anything.
Yeah.
How are you properly representing your constituents?
Mhm.
You've failed the the office that you were elected to. That's
Mhm.
point, period, fact.
Yeah.
So, and it's again going across both parties, right? So yeah, so basically what happened is a while ago, this local publication called the Dallas Express in Texas learned and it even like we could just tell from the
Mhm.
website, that's
Yeah.
but all good. They learned about her issues with dementia from a senior staffer in her office. Then in 2024, when the publication wasn't able to reach Representative, I'm also saying Granger, like Hermione Granger. I don't even know
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that's
Granger, I think that's
Granger,
right.
yeah. They went to Granger's district office and found it basically abandoned. After making some calls, they learned from sources that she had been living in a nursing home for months without the public knowing about it, and not showing up for work. The last time she actually voted on anything, let me go back to, I believe it's this one. Yeah, the last time she actually voted on anything was November 6th, 2023.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Almost 2 years?
Yeah.
without like this.
Oh wait, sorry. No, the last time she cast a vote was July of the following year of 2024. But
Still a year.
Yeah.
It's still okay. July 2024. So we're looking at like 8-9 months, whatever.
Yeah,
Fine.
but still a while.
A while.
Where like there's 8-9 months where you have a representative who is battling dementia and then eventually goes into a nursing
And
home.
nobody knows who she
and
is.
nobody knew. Yeah, and nobody knew that, and it wasn't reported to. I'm assuming maybe some people knew,
Wow.
but not enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then on the Democratic side, we have also some, unfortunate updates there too, right? So we have most recently Representative Jerry Connolly, who unfortunately passed away. And he was a top Democrat on the Oversight Committee.
Mm-hmm.
He passed away at the age of 75.
After a bout with cancer.
Yes, after dealing with cancer. So he, as I mentioned, right, a ranking member of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and he actually beat AOC for that position.
Let's not give him enough credit. He didn't beat AOC for the position. The Democratic Party,
The
establishment
Mhm.
went against AOC and put Connolly in charge because Nancy Pelosi like campaigned for Connolly. It's another example of both parties, but really the Democratic Party are just frustrating
Mhm.
that they're willing to steamroll younger members with new ideas. Hell, members that know how to use a goddamn TikTok and Twitter account and stuff
Mhm.
like that for geriatric people who were born during segregation. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's still so many old people who this is like an old club that they want to protect each other because honestly, they know that their time's almost up. They're old. Their ideas are old. They have no energy for this, nothing. But instead of actually, I heard this somewhere and it sticks with me. Humans are the only species on the planet that allows the older generation to lead.
Mhm.
It does not happen. You, as much as these Republicans are like, nature, things are natural in nature. It's like nature, Okay, you know what's natural in nature? Younger people leading the pack.
Mm.
Young lions and lionesses being the leaders of the pack.
Mhm.
Not 80-year-old Mufasa going, I think we should still be looking for hyenas. Baby, we ain't even eating hyenas no more, man. They're not around that much anymore. We going after lemmings now. Like, do you know what I mean? Like the newer generation knows what's up.
Yeah.
And we're the only species that allows the older generation to still dictate everything we're going through.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about older generation who has health issues, we're talking about older generation also, candidly, to your point,
Old ideas.
That's stuck in their ways. And this is kind of like a bigger message for everyone. I mean, candidly, I've experienced it in my own careers when I've had ideas that will be more efficient and will create processes for things. And just, it's better. It'll help the issue that's in front of us. And you have people, again, in my head, they're the established Democrats in this situation, right?
Mhm.
Where people that have been working either at the particular company I was at or the particular firm I was at, and just very stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
And refused to accept anything else. And if anything, got upset at you having the audacity to suggest anything different.
Yeah.
And I would assume I feel like that's a safe assumption, that it's probably the similar energy there.
Yeah.
Where you have established people that, again, it's not a knock to your career. I'm sure it's been incredible. And I'm sure you do have a lot of knowledge. Why not share that with the up and coming person who has new ideas of how to fix these issues that clearly y'all have not been able to fix?
Yeah.
Right? Because they are still here today.
Yeah.
But maybe this new person has great ideas and has a great potential, but you're still stuck in your ways because you want to keep doing things the way you've been doing it, either inefficient or continuing not fixing whatever problem we're talking about, instead of giving your institutional knowledge to the new person coming in. And a mix of your institutional knowledge with their ideas might fix the issue. But you know why you probably don't want to do that? Because it's your ego. Because you want to be the one to fix the issue, even though you haven't been able to.
Yeah.
So like, until that gets in people's head, until like that gets ingrained to the established Democrats, we're going to keep in this rabbit hole. This is going to keep on happening. Like, you guys have to just make space.
Yeah.
Make space for new people. Make space. And again, be mentors to them. This isn't your enemy. Ideally, these are the people that are carrying the torch. But you guys want to stay in your spaces for whatever X or Y reason. And that's just life, right? Like, it's okay to retire.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. Why don't you want to retire?
Going right down. You know who should have retired? And this is the last person, RBG. We were going to talk about her. She was one other piece of that puzzle where RBG stuck it out. She could have got out during Obama's last term,
Right.
and Obama could have installed someone. Obama also had Merrick Garland stolen from him,
Right.
but she just kept going, thinking like, oh, I'm gonna outlive the Trump administration.
And I will say, because I've don't put that up there. I will say I was an RBG fan until I learned a little bit more about certain things that she did. But again, in terms of women's rights, in terms of certain minority rights, certain minorities, I will clarify.
Yeah, certain minorities,
Yeah.
never indigenous people.
Yeah. She was a really big advocate. She was incredible. She worked out almost every day of her life. Like in a documentary about her life, like you just see her doing
I
curls.
like to lift weights at least 3 times a week.
Like so cute.
That little voice.
Yeah, with like whatever, like 5 pounds or something. But again, I know that there's very valid criticism of her decisions in the past. So, but still, right? Even though you are of good health, even though, just again, strategically, for the sake of the party, for the sake of the values that you want to see instilled and continued in this country, everyone needs to get over themselves.
Step away.
But I will say the danger is the flip side of that scenario, right? So as an example, I didn't know that right before the 2024 election, Sotomayor apparently was getting a lot of pressure to step down from the Supreme Court. The difference here, though, is that Sotomayor is actually only 70, right? And of good health from what we know of.
How old was RBG when she died?
She was, I don't even know. She
90
was like 90
something?
something? Let me see. Like, how old? Oh, actually, I can just put it here. How old?
Yeah, how old was RBG?
RBG when she
died?
died? She was 87.
Damn, so you're looking at like a 17-year difference, and people are going, get out now.
Well,
to Sotomayor.
Yeah, which was rude as hell. And also considering that there's other justices on the bench that are older, for like Clarence Thomas, which I think we are all in agreement that she just got the hell out, is 76, and then Samuel Alito is 74. So if you guys,
that is pretty sexist and racist to be like, hey,
against a double minority who's a woman and
7-year-old, get out before you die.
Yeah, don't come.
Excuse me.
Yeah, don't come after my Sotomayor. Like, I've never met her, but I've heard she's lovely, so I protect her.
I've never met her either, but I hear she's great.
So yeah, so it's a message really out to our representatives to really check your ego at the door, because that's not what you were elected to do. You were elected to represent the people that elected you. That's what you were elected to do. And if you can't properly do that because you know of a health condition, then it's your responsibility to bow out. It's your responsibility, if anything, to help someone else transition in.
Yes.
And if you actually care about this country, if you actually care about the office you hold, then you would do that. So here's hoping.
Here's hoping.
There's a slight change, because between deaths and health complications and all these different things, like if we're really a democratic government that believes in elections and proper voting and all of that, then we need to have the opportunity to, do that. So,
and before we give our close out with what's making us happy, I do want to say, we're probably gonna cut this. I always say we're probably gonna cut some shit out, but it is crazy that the universe keeps taking out good people. You know what I mean? Quote unquote good people. You know what I mean? And there are those out there who are hurting and devastating. And they just healthy. You know what I mean? And if you know what I mean, you know what.
No, I was gonna do it.
And if you know who and what I'm talking about, you know who and what I'm talking about. But anyways, damn, it's great. We lost the Pope. Yeah. Biden's got cancer. Yeah, Connolly gone.
Yeah,
all these people, and there's just some people out there who are doing so much evil, just healthy.
Yeah, and I mean,
that's crazy.
There was also, Sylvester Turner of Texas, who was another Democrat.
I was like, Sylvester Stallone.
No.
I was like, no.
Not you making jokes about people's deaths.
No, which is like, what other people?
Sylvester Turner.
And who is that?
Of Texas, was a House Democrat who died on March 5th. Ironically, well, not to laugh, but ironically, shortly after attending Trump's address to Congress, he shortly died thereafter. But because
he saw that address to Congress, like, take me, Elizabeth.
Anyways,
I'm coming, Elizabeth.
He was 7 years old. There was also Representative Raul Grijalva from Arizona, who died on March 13th. He was also a Democrat.
Yes.
And he died from complications of his cancer treatment. He died at the age of 77. So three Democrats in the past 3 months.
Have passed away.
House Democrats, yes.
House Democrats.
So it's also a huge hit to the Democratic Party.
Cancer's taking a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but so it's a huge hit to the Democratic Party, but then also, again, not forward thinking in terms of these people, right? Because a lot of them, we don't have time to go into the details, but a lot of them had health complications in the past, I would like to think that they are not the type of people to go back into office knowing that there's a risk, but who knows?
Mhm.
And again, it's a plea at this point to
Yeah.
our representatives, like, get over yourselves.
Yeah.
And just, if you can't do the job properly and you can't hold the office that you were elected into, then you should be required to bow out.
You should.
You should. Like, there should be some kind of something on here,
We
but of course not.
That's something we need more health checks, mental health checks. I mean, age limits would be great. I know other countries have age limit, but we don't want to be ageist. We want people to be able to live their dreams, and
And that's the
and,
thing.
and if they want to be in office until they're 80 because they love it and they're good at it, and and they bring a service and positive, yes, we want you to still be like. I always go look at Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders in his 80s, and the guy wears it well. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But there's just some people, unfortunately, who do not, and that's okay.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, so
Uh,
I tried to look into this ahead of time, but I
Mhm.
couldn't, because I was thinking the same thing, right? Like, it would be nice if there's some kind of nonpartisan, objective doctor or a couple of doctors as part of the government that are regularly doing these, physicals and checking up on the president to give accurate information. And it should be that if the doctor lies, then it's a
Yeah.
crime. Like, there should be systems in place
Mhm.
to protect against this, to ensure that we're actually getting the right information.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I'll say on this point is that I refuse to believe that Trump's, like, physical came back with glowing reviews, the way this administration tries to frame it. Because between aesthetics and between
You
eating
know they
habits,
lying. You know they're lying about his health. They say he's 6'6", 240 pounds. What is he, a linebacker for the Eagles? No, thank you.
yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So let's just listen, Republicans and Democrats, especially Democrats, y'all need to stop staying in office until it's way past your prime. Let's hope something gets done by that. And honestly, I don't know how much time Biden's have left, but I do hope he spends it with his family and that he's with loved ones. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's all we want. Thank you for another great episode. Before we leave, as always, you want to do this? You want to go first, like always, for this week?
Well, you know what's funny? Because last week when you gave the preview for that episode and you were like, "Oh yeah, the Knicks are making us happy," that's not making me happy right now,
Not right now.
because
No,
we were defeated
I did not make me happy.
in a heartbreaking way
Mhm.
with that last shot. And if you're a Knicks fan, you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm, mhm.
That was heartbreaking. So that's not what's making me happy. Oh,
Okay.
look, the camera's following you.
Oh, it is
cool.
following me. Sorry about that, guys. It's following me.
But I don't know. I'm trying to think of, like,
I'll go.
yeah, go ahead.
Something that's making me happy this week is reading. I've
Mhm.
actually been reading a lot. Should I put up the book that I just finished? I don't know if
Sure,
anybody.
you just need to explain it.
Okay, so this is a book about the history of blackface. This is one of the books that's being banned around the country because it teaches people about the history of England and Europe having these. Basically, every person of color ever was always played by a white man, especially women were played by white men. So this book talks about the history of, like, Shakespeare using blackface to people today using blackface, and how a lot of people try to justify it for, like, oh, I love black people. I was only trying to be like Michael Jackson because I love Michael Jackson, all these things, and it's still happening today.
Yeah.
So basically, long story short, I've been reading this book called Blackface. I finished it. It's a very small book. It's great.
It's by who?
It's by Ayanna Thompson, and it's a fantastic book that I think everybody should read. Even I got a lot out of it. Of even when you kind of use your voice to imitate a black person, or even a person of color. There's brown face. So all the ways that, like, minstrel shows and blackface and brownface are still happening today.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives a great history of the very few instances where there was actually whiteface, where it was like a black person putting on like white makeup to try and make pretend they were like a Shakespeare character, which when black people did that, it was death threats and almost lynching. But when white people dressed up as black people, it was stardom and movies.
Mm-hmm.
So this book, Blackface, and is a great book. I suggest you read it, and really look up any book that is on the banned book list. This is a little it's in there. I don't know if you can read it. It says this book is one of 381 books removed from the Naval Academy Library by the Donald Trump administration. So these are like all books that are banned books. I think you should check it out.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, maybe we can look into it, but I think the concept of banned books is also like banned from certain governments.
They're not banned,
Nationwide.
but they have been banned from
At least
like
not now,
libraries.
not yet.
Yeah. So the term banned is, it's depending on where it would span, but that is a banned book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just reading is making me happy. See, something small.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to be, which is the whole point of like us doing this after every episode. It's hard to be happy during everything that's happening. But yeah, hopefully people are finding their happiness somewhere.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our episode this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys next week. Stay safe, stay joyous, find your happiness. Goodbye. Say goodbye, co-host.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Bye.